The Sopranos is considered one of the greatest television shows ever made. However, throughout The Sopranos' runtime, there are a handful of episodes that don't sit well with its devoted fans. These are episodes such as the Christopher episode that focuses on the conflict between Italian Americans and Native Americans during the Christopher Columbus Parade, the infamous test dream episode that has mixed reviews depending on who you talk to about it. Of course, there's A Hit is a Hit and its lackluster storyline, and most certainly there's In Camelot, specifically for the introduction of the creepy character of Fran Felstein. But with these handful of episodes that leave a sour taste in the mouths of Sopranos fans and critics alike, is there one season in particular that leaves its fans having the same sour taste in their mouths once the season finale credits appear on screen? As the question is, what is the worst season of The Sopranos? Throughout each season, there's quite a bit of storylines happening in each season. In season 1, it was the introduction of the Sopranos cast and fully getting to know and understand the complex character of Tony, and discovering how brutal his relationship with his mother was and how it affected his mental health, but also how it interfered with his mafia family. In season 2, it was the introduction of the characters of Janice, Richie, and Furio, Christopher's change of heart into the film industry, and the beginning of the end for Richie April and David Scatino's bust-out scam. Season 3 focused on the FBI's plan to take down Tony and his criminal family, the passing of Livia, Christopher getting made, Ralph killing Tracy, the introduction of Gloria Trillo, and the heist done by Jackie Jr. that ultimately costed him his life. Season 4 was the season of Ralph, as we're introduced to the character of Piomai, the tragedy with Ralph's son, the joke about Ginny's sacrimony, and the whacking of Ralph, as well as Tony's HUD scam, Christopher's battle with drugs and alcohol, and of course the infamous episode of Whitecaps. Meanwhile, season 5, we saw the divorce take place between Tony and Carmela, the introduction of Tony Blendetto, the beginning of Uncle Junior's battle with Alzheimer's, Adriana's downfall with the FBI, as well as the unforgettable test dream episode and the introduction of Fran Felstein. And heading into the last season of The Sopranos, there's a lot to unpack here, as right away we learn that it's going to be a dark season with the passing of Eugene, the incident of Uncle Junior trying to kill Tony, the discovery of Vito's sexuality, the war between New York and New Jersey, as well as the passing of Christopher. Now, to be clear, all the seasons, in my opinion, are fantastic. The writing, acting, plots, character development, and cinematography is all brilliant throughout each episode. As for me, there is no worst season of The Sopranos. When thinking of which season is the worst for The Sopranos, a lot of fans tend to lean towards the first half of season 6. This is simply because Tony stays in a coma for a majority of this duration, and the other parts of the first half of season 6 have Tony recovering from his coma. This is so shocking to me because the 6th season gets off to an incredible start with all the death that surrounds it, as by the end of it all, Tony and Paulie are basically the last two standing. But in my opinion, the worst season of The Sopranos for me is sadly season 1. While the first season has a ton of charm, memorable moments and quotes, iconic scenes, and charisma towards its characters, storyline, plot, and character development, for me, it's a totally different season and show than what the show truly develops into as the series progresses. When we look back towards the first season, it feels so different, and as time has progressed, it feels like we're watching a totally different series than what we saw in the first season in 1999. At times throughout the first season, the series is viewed and represented in a way that supports a more comedic narrative than the traditional mafia narrative that the series would later become. To me, this is no surprise, as The Sopranos aired right after a stretch of comedy shows such as Friends, Seinfeld, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. This is supported with the character of Georgie and his lack of intelligence, as any time he's featured on screen usually results in a good laugh. This can also be seen in the way Tony and Dr. Melfi understand each other throughout the beginning stages of their relationship.
Hey, I don't even let anybody wag their finger in my face.
At times throughout the first season, audiences are bombarded and almost pushed into a wide variety of constant mafia narratives, lingo, and storylines. We watch characters commit their first of many murders, shakedowns, and sit-downs take place constantly throughout the first season. Hijackings and gang retaliation all occur throughout the first season. These occurrences are at times being forced into the series. As fans of the mafia genre had just finished a decade's worth of gangster films like Casino, Goodfellas, and A Bronx Tale, showcasing this type of violent narrative. So in many ways and at times throughout the first season, The Sopranos is constantly reminding you that this is a mafia show. Whether it's Tony showcasing to the audience that he is a mob boss and not to be reckoned with by chasing down Mahaffey, or Tony's daughter Meadow having the courage to ask if her father is in the mafia, or the countless Godfather quotes and references, or the priest asking Carmela where Tony ranks Goodfellas. These gangster cliches, stereotypes, references, slang, and narratives are constantly being reminded to the viewer. While the series is about macho masculine murderers, masculinity, the mafia, and the corruptive, greed-filled world that comes with it, the first season of The Sopranos showcases it's also a series about family, as we learn this in the season 1 finale. And sticking with the season 1 finale, it's by far the best episode throughout the first season, as it captures everything The Sopranos is at the time in the first season and everything it will become moving forward in future seasons. But rotating back to the first season, some of the episodes have not aged well as time has passed. While some of the episodes and part of the season itself is engaging, with the storylines of Livia wanting to kill her own son, the feud between Tony and Uncle Jr., and Meadow finding out about her father's real line of work. However, these are the only things that season 1 has going for it. Some of the episodes are filler episodes. The series itself in the first season showcases grainy camera footage that we can see in the Boca episode, and most of the episodes in the first season are unengaging. It also doesn't help its cause when you have a hit as a hit featured in your episode log, as well as the perverted Coach Hauser in the Boca episode. The storylines are quick in the first season. We get a quick introduction of the acting boss of Jackie Aprile Sr. as he has a quick battle with cancer. We get a brief introduction to the characters surrounding Tony Soprano, as key characters such as Paulie and Silvio are barely featured in the pilot episode and throughout the first season. The situation with Livia wanting to kill her own son is shocking yet confusing all at the same time, as we cannot determine if she wants to have Tony whacked because of Livia residing in Green Grove, Tony having 3 of his captain's mothers also residing in Green Grove, Tony seeing a therapist and Dr. Melfi, Tony trying to sell Livia's home, or all of the above. And it's this relationship that Tony has between his mother is for me what sets season 1 behind the rest of the seasons. It seems episode after episode, Tony is constantly fighting with Livia, as he is trying to make peace with her while she ages. And while this may be an insight to what Tony had to constantly deal with growing up with Livia as a mother, for me it feels dragged out and repetitive. We also see storylines and characters that change throughout the first season, as we're introduced to the character of Gino in the bakery with Christopher, but later on, we see the same man as Vito, and we also get a totally different father Phil than the one we see in the pilot episode. Throughout the first season, there are some weird voiceover edits and transitions and cuts, as these only add to the first season's age as well, as The Sopranos was still finding itself in the first season. I fully understand the importance of the first season of The Sopranos, as without it, we wouldn't have the entire season, as well as the importance of the college episode, as the college episode introduced audiences and mainstream television to the introduction of the anti-hero, as it showed that television didn't have to be all about comedy and sitcoms. It's The Sopranos finding itself during the first season that ultimately holds it back for me. While I do absolutely enjoy the first season, the characters itself have nothing to them. And while we do get the introduction of multiple characters, these characters are still coming into their own, and we don't know who they're going to become in the mafia world yet. Christopher and Brendan are completely immature and are still children. Dr. Melfi seems to be just starting out as a therapist, and Tony's children are very spoiled throughout the first season, especially Meadow. I do enjoy, however, that the writers remembered certain aspects and details of the first season and incorporated them into later seasons, such as the season 1 finale dinner scene where AJ quotes his father when Carmela tells Tony that he's going to hell when he dies, and the murder of Emil Kolar that haunts Christopher throughout his life. For me, there was also the debate of naming Season 5 or the beginning of Season 6 as the worst season of The Sopranos. For Season 5, it was the introduction of a plethora of characters, including the animal of Tony Blundetto, as his character felt as if he didn't fit into the core of the series, as he was just so outdated. Season 5 is also mostly focused on just Tony and Carmela's divorce, which can get repetitive and dragged on. For the beginning of Season 6, the consideration for it being one of the worst seasons of The Sopranos is simply due to Tony being in a coma for a majority of the season. And when we are not seeing Tony on screen fighting for his life, we are treated to weird dream sequences that feature a different man than the Tony Soprano we know and love, as Tony lost his briefcase and switches lives with Kevin Finnerty. During the first season of The Sopranos, the characters, the storylines, the plot, the writers, and the directors were all finding themselves, as the entire first season was banking on the first episode getting picked up or not for television. We're just getting to know and understand who these characters really are and what The Sopranos will be all about. The first season is very much about the battle Tony faces between balancing his mob life and his family life at the same time, as this would be something Tony does throughout the entire series. While there are some engaging narratives and topics, most of the first season outside the first episode and the last few episodes are just uninteresting and lack any real plot development. It's interesting to note that the fourth season on IMDb is voted the worst based off rankings. Of course, this is all open to interpretation, as this is my own thoughts and opinions, but I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about what you think is the worst season of The Sopranos down in the comment section below. For more Sopranos content, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.